Okay, just keep in front of him.
Black line snake.
So I'm sure you can all appreciate how devastated I was when this stunning snake managed to escape down a spider burrow just as I was changing lenses. I would have really loved a few seconds to get some macro video of what was the nicest specimen I'd seen in a long time. Here's what they usually look like.
Python here just got home from shooting another snake. It's very, very healthy. Oh my god, this is one of the best condition.
Yeah.
Pythons I've seen in a long time. She is a doozy.
Oi, well, not me, it was him.
And feisty at that. Oh, don't you like me, sweetheart? Come on. I'm nice and warm. I'm a good guy. Come on. Can we just have a little cuddle?
Yeah, but...
That is a healthy python.
Get him. Get him.
This thing's about as feisty as my wife. Feistier.
Look at who's Josh.
He's charging up.
It's like, I don't like that comment. I do not like that comment. I'm sure you don't talk about wives like that, so I'm gonna give you. Oi.
Oh, jeez.
Mm.
She's beautiful. Wow,
Oh,
that's such
look.
a good condition.
Yeah, we might take some photos of him.
Yeah, it's a cracker. Very expensive. Now, let's try not get pooed on by this one.
You are
Let's get
white.
way further back.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Your skin. It's too bright. Can we go there? There.
Yeah, just a few of them. Just a
There we go.
nothing.
Little kiss.
Nothing.
Don't touch me.
Exactly like this. But yeah, this is the most beautiful, in condition, healthy python that we've seen whilst we've been in the Cape. This is just an absolutely cracking specimen. You can always tell a good, what I should really say is you can always tell a python's health and condition by the fat deposit
The way you kiss.
on the back of the head. You know, it's pretty evident, you know, she's in good condition because you can't see any of her vertebrae, any of her ribs. She's a little fired up even though we've got her off the road. It's a cold night. We've had to play a little bit of tug of war with her, but I'm sure she'll calm down and start to appreciate some body warmth in a minute. But yeah, absolutely cracking specimen. She's
Yeah.
having
Not a
hiss.
bad find.
She's turning into hissy missy, but I think
Oh, she's going to give you another kiss, I reckon.
she's maybe looking for
She's looking for...
someone to put some eggs down, maybe, because she's got that fat mama condition thing going on. So, a very, very healthy python. Yeah, just a
Beautiful.
cracker.
Just insanely,
Love them.
insanely pretty.
All right, my fellow nature nutters, look at this beautiful animal. Now, we caught this snake last night and I would have left her there, but the problem was that the bit of forest that she was fleeing was actually not so far away. There was a bushfire going on. So she'd obviously smelt the smoke and was doing the dash. But the only forest that she had to move into was habitat that's been burnt as well. We've been doing a lot of work through that habitat with palm cockatoos and stuff lately, and it's just decimated. It wasn't just a nice place for her to move into. So the only other bit of land around there that, we'll put it like this, it was under threat of being burnt as well. So we've brought her a couple of k's out of town, just so she's in the same habitat, but somewhere safe. So we found this beautiful bit of habitat very similar to where she's come from. So we're going to do a re-release here this afternoon. Now she's a little bit feisty out the bucket, but we'll get a few photos and stuff. Cool. Okay, so being a python, she's obviously a constrictor. So the reason I wanted to be in this habitat rather than the burnt stuff was that there's lots of prey, bandicoots, little possums, mice, all those rodent sort of style things. So it's just a really good spot for her to be.
Yeah, good.
She's trying to climb me. Kisses.
You can feel the warmth of the phone, I reckon.
Sounds like that, yeah.
What a shame, it's such a stunning afternoon. We're taking these photos and I can smell smoke, so I charge up over the hill to discover some mongrels lit the valley on fire. There's not a hope in Hades I'm leaving this snake here now.
Alright, so unfortunately last night we couldn't find an appropriate place to let her go. It was just a bit of a struggle. But we've come out there this morning. Now I wouldn't typically release a snake during the day, but this is a really nice, healthy snake who's well and truly able to defend for herself. But as you'll see in the background, we've got this beautiful wet gully. We're in this beautiful bit of savanna woodland, so there's lots of structure, lots of mature trees. There's going to be really good prey, all the little vermin, the bandicoots and things that a nice mature python like this will eat. So I'm going to take it down the gully in a moment and release it down there. All right, so this gully is actually a lot steeper and very loose underfoot. So instead of going all the way down to the wet forest to release her, I feel that there's lots of adequate grass cover here. So I'm just going to let her make her way down this little creek gully. She'll obviously find herself into that forest or wherever she's comfortable with. So yeah, this is the moment we say goodbye to this absolute treasure. See you, sweetheart. Perfect. This is what they do. They usually head for the treetops. That's their defense mechanism. Let's go hit the shade. Your armpit.
She must have molted not long ago.
Well, the head's molted, but the body
Yeah.
hasn't. But we were super fortunate because she was sunning herself right in the middle of the road. We absolutely had to smash the brakes on to stop in time. You know, it's very windy at the moment. There's lots of leaf litter and sticks on the road, and she just blends in all too well. So we're really thankful that we found her first, because the next car down here would have squished her. All right.
All right. We'll leave a bit. Oi.
Let's get some photos.
Alright, it's going to be pretty hard for you to see, but this morning we've come to check out this big boulder pile, and I've stumbled across this beautiful burnt snake skink working its way through the leaf litter. I can hear around us right now that there's lots of little litter skinks running around, so she's obviously on the hunt, or it's on the hunt for some breakfast, working its way through the leaf litter. Those of you that have watched the channel will have seen these burnt snake skinks before. They're a beautiful legless lizard that occurs throughout the better portion of Australia here. But yeah, we're going to just quietly follow this animal through the leaf litter and see if it has any luck catching some prey. This skink here doesn't know what he's getting himself into. He's approaching the back end of this burnt snake skink. Now it's hard to think that this legless lizard eats these little litter skinks. This one seems to be moving away Well, unfortunately, after a good hour or so of following this Burton's, it became pretty apparent to us that it wasn't really fussed about feeding, as it had ignored several close encounters, opportunities that it should have typically taken full advantage of. So given the fact that we were under attack by the local green ant colony, we decided to leave it in peace, soaking up the morning sun. Mariella had eagerly been awaiting the arrival of these two chicks after months of nest building and Mum patiently incubating the eggs, when on one of our reef flat excursions she discovered that they had finally arrived. As you can see, Mum and Dad work frantically all day going back and forth with a constant supply of food to keep up with the ever-growing demands of their rapidly developing chicks. As food goes in, out come little poos, known as fecal sacs, which have a rather clever mucous membrane keeping them intact within a neat capsule, allowing the parents to safely remove their offspring's waste, keeping the nest clean and therefore far less obvious to their predators such as tree snakes and rodents. The sacs reminded Mariella and I of tiny little bocconcini cheeses. Mariella and I both regret that we didn't spend more time chasing what has to be one of the most spectacular birds in the country and one of only 4 true bird of paradise species found in Australia, the magnificent rifle bird here. The rainforest of the Iron Range is filled with the incredibly iconic call of this bird, which resonates vast distances with no mistake as to who it belongs to. We were, however, very lucky to have this juvenile male just a short walk through the forest from where we were camped, who would copy and practice the moves of the older males who would dominate the higher, better lit display perches up in the surrounding treetops. Inexperienced and rusty as he was, he still managed to entertain us with a flurry of enthusiastic displays, to the point he'd be rather distracted, accepting and almost oblivious to us being so abnormally close, and even willing to allow us to shoot with flash. We swear he was revelling in the limelight and absolutely loved the attention. Although we managed to either bugger it up or arrive too late to film any of the mature males doing their display, that doesn't mean we don't have some tips for those of you wanting to chase them harder than we did. We found them most active between 8 to 9 am and then again between 3 to 4 pm, with peak display season being August to September. To find their territories and favourite perches with that easily recognisable call isn't at all difficult. However, tracking them quietly through the forest without disturbing them is more where the challenge lies. If you find yourself in the jungle hearing a whooshing sound like a bunch of plastic bags being rubbed together, well, you're exactly where you need to be, because that's the sound of the male's rapid wing beating as he fires up his little dance routine. You'll also find there's going to be a number of females overhead looking down upon him as he postures himself to capture as much light, therefore reflecting a whole bunch of dazzling colours at the girls, advertising his fitness, hopefully securing a mating with at least one of them. It's an awesome show, but I'm afraid we failed to capture it. Okay, nature nutters, I'd like to introduce you all to Hazel, our beautiful little orphan northern brown bandicoot. She unfortunately, like so many baby bandies, fell victim to an all too common scenario. One night on our way home, just outside of town, something on the road caught my eye, so I threw a Yui, whereby we discovered poor little Hazel huddled up beside one of her dead siblings, with her mother and all her other siblings strewn further down the road in an absolutely horrific scene, leaving her the sole survivor. And as you can imagine, there was no way Mariella and I were going to ignore the need to adopt her at this age where there wasn't a hope in Hades that she'd survive on her own. You see, she was still completely reliant on her mother's milk, but thankfully after having worked as a wildlife caretaker in the past, and despite us being in a very remote location, Mariella happened to have everything required to take good care of her. When we first got her, she was understandably very traumatised, shy, and only weighed about 45 grams with a light coat of fur, but very quickly with routine feeds day and night from Mariella, she responded nicely. Every Friday we'd weigh her to monitor her progress, and before long we were able to start feeding her solids. And it was at that point we affectionately started referring to her as the Velociraptor, as she would go crazy and had so much fun devouring her prey. It was brilliant to see how instinctual it was for her to search and chase bugs. We also really loved it because it was such good stimulus and exercise for her to work for her food, and subsequently we saw a real change in her demeanour. To Mariella's anguish, she was quickly becoming independent and due to be released before too long. And it's probably just as well because we were having to go out for hours every night road patrolling, busting open dead logs and searching for prey like insect larvae, spiders, worms, centipedes, frogs, you name it, she ate it all, and we were struggling to keep up with the demand. Despite that, everything was actually going really well, and we'd been discussing where and when we'd release her back into the wild when we went in to say good morning to find our gorgeous little girl had quietly passed away in her sleep. Obviously we were both super devastated, but I really couldn't help but feel terrible for poor Mariella after she had absolutely poured her heart and soul into raising Hazel to that stage. Unfortunately, with no vet available, we couldn't get a post-mortem check done, so we'll never know what nasty little bug took her life. But it must have been something pretty serious because there hadn't been a single sign of ill health, like runny poos, snotty nose, or lethargy leading up to that moment. Unfortunately, it's the biggest problem faced when you raise wild animals, and that's the fact that there's no substitute for mum's milk. You see, all mammalian mothers pass down a really beautiful gift when they breastfeed their young, a substance called colostrum that's full of all the antibodies she's developed over her lifetime, protecting her offspring from all the nasty infections she's experienced, but the one crucial thing that's missing from man-made milk formulas. It's likely that if she had been raised by her own mother, she probably would have survived the infection that ultimately killed her in our care. My Australian viewers should know, but for those of you outside Oz, you may be excused for thinking bandicoots are rodents, but in actual fact they're another one of our unique marsupials, and therefore more closely related to kangaroos than they are rats and mice. Something a lot of Aussies won't know, however, is the fact that they differ quite a bit. You see, the pouch that makes marsupials famous is completely different on bandicoots and it faces backwards. It's only logical that if they were to face forward, it would quickly fill with dirt as mum forages for food. Bandicoots, unfortunately, are one of those species that are very prone to being struck on our roads, particularly in North Queensland, because they simply love our parks and gardens and thrive in all the cane fields. They come out at night to take advantage of the sheer number of insects on the road and frankly get a bit silly about it. You see, they'll run off the road as a vehicle approaches, but have a tendency to be dazzled by the lights only to turn straight back again before people even notice. I'm not excusing most people's driving, but they do make it quite challenging for drivers to avoid them, that's for sure. We humans have taken a huge toll, and it wasn't just the obvious things like roads and land clearing, but we also very stupidly went and introduced cats and foxes to the Australian mainland, which played a massive part in the demise of so many species across Australia, not just bandicoots. Today, only 3 of the original 9 species that were found on the Australian continent at the time of the first European settlers are still considered common. Out of the other 6, 2 species are now extinct, and the other 4 only existing on a couple of small remote islands or in tiny fragments of their former distribution. Really such a shame, because they are such adorable animals, to the point I'm actually surprised that they've not been adopted into the pet industry. They're as good as any dog that I've ever kept, and far more affectionate than cats. Anyway, I'll leave it with one last message, and that would have to be please slow down and give wildlife a wide berth on our roads, careless of where in the world you live. The Cape plays host to 5 out of the 6 species of Cryptodactylus geckos, better known as the bent-toe or ringtail geckos, with the 6th member being stranded on the other side of the country in the Kimberleys. We were fortunate enough to start ticking off members of this genus with Hoskini, the local species endemic to the Iron Range. Initially they proved to be quite difficult to find because it was either impenetrable forest or long journeys out of town that hindered my ability to get into ideal habitat. You see, with diesel at $2.85 a litre, I was really trying to avoid having to drive too far for stuff, and given how often we were going out, I kind of figured I'd stumble across somewhere to find them eventually anyway. Well, that's exactly what happened, thankfully sooner rather than later, because it was a bit of a hike into an area that becomes quite difficult to cross in the wet season when the Claudie Falls are pumping. I'd taken numerous friends there to share this big, gorgeous, highly sought after gecko, and subsequently racked up some good numbers, when I thought to myself, the creek's low enough so I'll commit and lug in all the lighting required to get some good quality video. But of course, the one night I choose, there happens to be little to no geckos to be found. Well, it soon became apparent why. There it was, without question, the largest, fattest spotted python I'd ever seen, hunting the same rock screen escarpment that I'd usually find a good dozen geckos, if not more, every time we went. I finally got eyeshine of another specimen, and I was setting up the spotlights to film when I unfortunately spooked it, and in checking where it went, discovered this monster waiting to ambush yet another unsuspecting victim. It had clearly been working the area for some time and subsequently put a real dent in the local gecko population, so I had no choice but to leave pretty empty-handed video-wise. But here's a bunch of nice photos that we got of a lovely gravid female and another feeding on a katydid we gave it that had been attracted to the light and very foolishly landed on the gecko's back. Well, beautiful people, that brings us to the end of the dry season, and I certainly hope you've enjoyed the series up to this point. And if you have, be sure to join us as we start to venture into an epic wet season full of fabulous birds, amazing numbers of baby green pythons, plus plenty more of the weird and wonderful critters that the Iron Range has yet to dish up. And be sure to smash those like and subscribe buttons, that way you'll remain up to date and won't fall into that nasty wildlife withdrawal state that no one likes. And of course, come see more and be brighter with Brother Nature.